and welcome to the Confusion to Clarity podcast. This podcast is for anybody who needs that reminder that they really are capable of achieving amazing things. Each week, we will be diving deep into all things mindset, manifestation, and spirituality. Hosted by me, Natalie, a clinical hypnotherapist, psychotherapist, coach, mum, and lover of all things mindset and manifestation. When listening, I want to give you a break from reality. I'm going to share with you the tools and techniques that you need to make your goals reality so you can stop playing small. Hello and welcome back to the Confusion to Clarity podcast. I hope you are all well and have had an amazing week. As I'm recording this today, it is so much cooler and I am so grateful. I don't want to sound like a stereotypical Brit moaning about the weather, but my goodness, the last 10 days were excessive. And yeah, we just don't have the facilities. I mean, they say it was a heat wave. Was it a heat wave? Was it just a summer? I don't know, but it was hot. And if you're listening to this and you're not in the UK, which this podcast is listened to in over 300 countries, which absolutely blows my tiny mind. Honestly, I can't process how me recording something in my little office in West Sussex can reach all the other parts of this big wide world. Honestly, I'm just so grateful to everybody who listens. But if you aren't in the UK and you are listening in a country where you have hot weather consistently, you might be thinking, well, that's a bit of an exaggeration if it was only kind of 8 days. Like, surely it couldn't have been that bad. It was. We don't have the facilities in this country to deal with hot weather because most of the year it's not hot here, and the heat here is I've traveled the world and I've been to some really hot countries, and it's a different kind of heat. The only way I can describe it is a bit like when the dishwasher just finishes and you open the door too soon and that hot steamy air hits your face. That was what it was like here. It was like living in that sticky, humid heat. It was unbearable. Our houses do not have air conditioning because they're just not built with it. We don't really need it for the majority of the year. Most of our cars have air conditioning, but I mean, we can't live in our cars. The supermarkets, the freezers in the supermarkets couldn't cope. They were crashing. When I did my online shop this week, I couldn't get any freezer food or barely any cold chilled food because all the fridges and freezers had packed up. So yeah, it was quite the week. So yeah, today much more bearable, much more pleasant. 24 degrees, sun shining, we can manage with that. So yeah, very, very grateful to be sleeping again and able to sit here and breathe. And enough talking about the weather. This coming Monday is our next meditation session. So if you've not heard about this before, the first Monday of every month, I host a meditation session. It's free to join. There is no participation required. You literally log on, and we have a different theme every month. And you just, as I said, log on, camera off, microphone off, get comfortable, and just enjoy 45 minutes of deep relaxation. And it has quite a few members already in the group, which I'm super grateful for. And I love having the different people online because I feel like that collective energy really, really helps the meditation and makes it more profound. So the more the merrier. If you are into meditations or you just want some time to switch off, come along. It would be amazing to have even more people there. The link to join is in the show notes. It's a WhatsApp community. Just join there. I share the Zoom link and any updates about the group. And it's at 8 p.m. on the first Monday of every month. So it's 8 p.m. BST, so British summertime. So in other news, no other life dates to update, no more emotional breakdowns, no more tears around school. I feel like I've got that out of my system. And we're now just processing towards the end of the school year, which has gone super, super quick, and preparing for the summer holidays. But back to this week's episode and what I wanted to talk about. So this is something that comes up pretty much every session with clients. It's something, again, that I experienced myself. And that is about how we feel when things start to go well for us. So a lot of my clients, myself included, have all suffered or experienced and deal with feelings of anxiety. And when we're in that state, our brain gets used to being stressed. It gets used to running on the high cortisol, the high adrenaline. It gets used to scanning for dangers all of the time. And as you know, if you're a regular listener of the podcast, a side effect of that is a dysregulated nervous system. But another effect of that can be when things start to go well or go in your favor, it can be really triggering, really derailing, because part of you is like, oh, this feels good, this feels aligned, this feels exciting. And then the other part of you that's bracing for danger and familiarity of things not going to plan is then activated, and you find yourself in this sort of turbulent state of, one minute I feel happy, the next minute I feel terrified that things are going well. So today's episode is really talking about that, bringing awareness and hopefully helping you to see it from a different perspective. Because when we have an awareness over something, that is when we can start to make shifts and changes, and we can start to be kinder and more compassionate to ourselves. So, an example of this, I'm going to use relationships because this is something that comes up so often with my clients. So, for example, you are in a new relationship and things are going well, and maybe previous relationships haven't been particularly smooth for you. There's been trials and tribulations, and this relationship is going really, really well, and you're kind of a month or so into it, and then suddenly you start getting these intrusive thoughts. What if this happens? What if that happens? And those thoughts start to spiral. Maybe you begin to replay previous stories of the past. Maybe you're analyzing conversations that you've had recently with that person. Did they really mean that? Or did they mean this? Or they did say it in that kind of funny tone. Maybe they didn't mean that. Did I miss a cue there? Or, is this really what I want right now? What if it happens again? What happened before? And we become really, really analytical. We start to wonder if perhaps we've missed something. We question whether we're doing the right thing. And it's almost like our minds become detectives, and they become like these little detectives who are convinced they have to find one final clue before they can finally close the case. And that is hugely enervating and hugely draining. And if you've ever experienced that, what I really want to convey in this episode is to help you see that that is not you going backwards. There's actually a really understandable reason why our minds do this, why they become detective inspectors, looking out for danger, trying to piece together all these puzzle pieces and create this dossier of evidence. Because our brains are prediction machines. Your subconscious, the job isn't to make you happy, it's to keep you alive, it's to keep you safe, it's to keep you well. So your subconscious is always running from that question of, am I safe? Is this safe? It's scanning for danger. The problem is that your brain doesn't decide what's safe based on what makes you happy. It decides what's safe based on what feels familiar. So if you've spent a really long time, as we were just saying, living in stress, if you were in a previous relationship where you had to observe every little detail, he said he's going out, but is he really going where he said he is? Or you'd been let down. Your brain now starts to scan for evidence. It starts searching for problems. It looks for, opportunities to really overthink. It's expecting something bad to happen because that before has been your new normal. So when things start to go well, so let's just say you're in this new relationship and it's flowing and you're happy and you feel contented, your subconscious isn't recognizing that peace as safety, that happiness as safety. What it's actually doing is going, hold on a second, this feels unfamiliar. And unfamiliar, that can't feel comfortable, that can't be safe. So it puts you into a hypervigilant state. And that's when you start to notice your brain searching, going back through the archives, replaying old conversations, old mistakes, old relationships, old decisions. And the really frustrating thing here is you're probably not consciously doing this. You're not sitting there going, I feel happy. How can I make myself feel shit? That's not how it works. It all happens unconsciously, which is what makes it even more infuriating, because it'll be like a random thought just pops into your head, or classic, you see something on social media. Maybe you've seen your ex posting on social media, or you see, a venue pop up that you went to, and it's something really innocuous like that that just gets that little detective in your brain fired up and begins looking for evidence that you might have missed something. Because if that detective in your brain can find the problem first, then it's believing what it can do then is stop you getting hurt again. It's like, well, if I can preempt this, if I can, get ahead of the game, then I'm ensuring my safety. Now, this isn't because you are broken. It's not because you don't want to be happy. It's not because, necessarily this new relationship isn't right for you or the job or the friendship. It's because your nervous system has learnt that staying alert equates to keeping you safe. Keeping you safe equates to job done, tick. So think about it for a moment like this. Maybe you finally left a relationship and you knew this relationship just wasn't right. You'd been unhappy for a very, very long time, and you made the conscious decision to leave. And it was a decision based on logic that you had thought about for, a long time. You know it's the right thing to do, and you step away. And initially, you feel relieved. You feel a sense of pride in yourself that you took control of the situation, that you had the guts, the courage to leave, and you're just like, phew, I did it. I got out of that situation. But over the next few weeks, you start to live this new normal. Maybe you're not living with the person anymore, or you're not seeing them. And then again, something innocuous, not even conscious to your awareness comes up. And a little thought might pop in, like a voice might say, what if I overreacted? Okay, maybe they weren't that bad. Maybe there were some things that I did do that probably weren't right. What if I made the wrong decision? Or and we start introspecting the past, the shoulda, woulda, coulda, which automatically fuels anxiety. Or going back to what we were saying, maybe you're in a new relationship and then something spikes up and going, oh, this is going really well. And then your brain starts comparing, it starts looking for red flags, and it finds evidence to back up those beliefs. You find yourself questioning every message. Maybe you're noticing that you're analyzing every interaction. And often it's not because this new person has done anything wrong per se, but it's because your mind is trying to predict the future by using evidence of the past. Away from relationships, maybe you've started a new job or you've launched a business, maybe you've moved house. A big one, starting saying no to people and setting boundaries, that's a huge trigger for a lot of people. And then suddenly your brain starts replaying old situations where things didn't work out. And all the time, it's your brain trying to prepare you because it thinks that if it prepares you, then it's going to protect you. But obviously, what it is doing is pulling you away from the present moment. It's getting you back in your head. It's introspecting the past, as I said, shoulda, woulda, coulda, or negatively forecasting the future. What if, what if, what if? That is where anxiety lives because you're in your head. You're not in your body. You're not in the present moment. And it's self preservation. Your brain is doing its job, but it's become like this overbearing mother hen wrapping you in cotton wool, wanting to keep you safe from, any possible danger. So I like the analogy of imagining that it's a detective in your brain, a little detective living inside, and every time life starts expanding, the little detective picks up their file again and they start to sift through the information. So let's just check like one more thing here. Let's just replay that conversation one more time. Let's just analyze that situation. Let's just make sure we've got all the evidence. So imagine watching a detective in action. So if you were watching a detective in action, you would see that in order to solve the case, they would be collating all of their evidence. They would be interviewing the witnesses. They would be building the case. And then when they have all their information, they would take it to the court for the judge to make the final decision. In our brains, what's happening is the little detective is collating all the evidence, interviewing the witnesses, presenting it to the court, handing it over to the judge, only to turn up the next day and decide to reinvestigate the whole case over again. Now, if you were watching that, you'd think, oh, that's really bizarre. Why would you do that? But it's exactly what your anxious mind does. Every time life starts moving forward, it quietly and unconsciously says, let's just open that file once more. Let's just check that we've not missed anything. And the problem isn't that your mind keeps reopening the case. The problem is that nobody has ever taught you to know when it was safe to close it. Nobody's taught you when it was safe to archive that file and leave it in the archives and move on. So, what our minds continue to do is keep searching, analyzing, replaying, looking for that one more piece of evidence, because somewhere along the line, your brain learned that staying alert was safer than letting go. So, good detectives don't keep reopening cases, or solved cases at least, every single week. At some point, they close the file, and that's not because the situation never happened. It's not because that case wasn't important, but because they already have enough evidence to put that case to bed and leave the file in the archives where it needs to be. Anxious minds struggle to do that because they believe there's always one more clue, there's always one more answer, there's always one more piece of certainty waiting to be found. What anxiety is often searching for, or is always searching for, is safety, and they're two very, very different things. One of the biggest shifts I see in the therapy room with my clients isn't that somebody is stopping having anxious thoughts, because anxiety is a self-preservational tool. It's always going to be there. We're just learning how to keep it under the surface. It's that they stop believing every anxious thought deserves investigating, and that's the huge difference. Instead of following every thought down another rabbit hole, they begin to notice, they become aware, they understand why it's there, and the understanding is key. And then what they can begin to do is gently choose not to keep reopening the file. They can acknowledge the file is there, but they don't need to keep going back to the archives, bringing it out, reassessing it. Because when it comes to healing and evolving and becoming the most authentic versions of ourselves, it's not about finding the final clue, but what it is about is teaching your nervous system that the danger has passed, reassuring your nervous system, your subconscious, that you don't have to keep proving your decision was right. You don't have to keep preparing for something that isn't happening, and you don't have to earn the right to move forwards. And again, I think that's where a lot of people get caught up. If I've suffered enough, when I've suffered enough, then I can move on. Because sometimes healing is simply learning that it's safe to close the file, because self-trust isn't built by collecting more evidence. It's built by learning that you already have enough evidence. So the next time you notice your mind dragging you back into an old conversation, an old relationship, revisiting an old mistake or an old fear, instead of being really critical to yourself and saying, why am I doing this again? I want you to try asking yourself, what is my mind trying to protect me from? What is this little detective in my mind trying to find evidence for? Because what you notice with that question, it creates compassion instead of criticism. And again, when we're feeling anxious, when these thoughts are kind of reoccurring, it can be really easy to go, for goodness sake, why am I feeling like this? I thought I'd overcome this. Things are so much better in life. Why do I keep dragging up the past? If you can give yourself that compassion and see that it's not your brain working against you, it's actually trying to work for you, but it's got misconstrued. It's trying to find that evidence that feels enough to close the case. You can start viewing yourself in a more compassionate light. And if your brain is opening files, it's reminding yourself that you don't have to then read every single page of that file. Sometimes healing actually looks a little bit more like closing the folder, acknowledging that it's there, acknowledging what you've been through, but then looking up, taking a deep breath, and bringing your attention back to the life that's happening right in front of you. Because your future isn't created by endlessly re-examining your past, it's created by learning to trust yourself in the present. Which is why when I'm working with clients, I'm always going on about being present in the here and the now, which is where nervous system regulation work comes in, because that enables you to get out of your head, out of fight, flight, freeze, back into the here and now, because realistically, this is the only moment that we have. When we're introspecting the past, when we're negatively forecasting the future, it's pouring petrol on the bonfire of anxiety, and it's keeping it alive. So it's understanding that anxiety has a purpose, it has a job, it's there to keep us safe, but also understanding that in a lot of these cases in our life, it's not self-preservational. It's your brain getting misconstrued, thinking it's doing its job, but it's actually gone into overdrive. I really like the analogy of the detective, and I feel like when those little kind of what ifs come up in your brain, just visualizing that little detective who's there, going back, trying to open the case, trying to find more evidence, and what your brain is seeking is safety. So bring it back to the now, breathe, regulate your nervous system, and speak to yourself with more kindness and compassion. And as I said a few moments ago, it's about asking yourself the question, what is my mind trying to protect me from? And there you're going to be able to find a much more clear, concise, less anxiety induced answer. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, if you have, please leave a review. Please download and subscribe to the podcast. It really helps me get the episodes out to even more people. And if you have enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody else who you feel may enjoy it too. In the show notes are all of my details of how to reach out and connect with me, how to work with me. There is the link to join the meditation group. And you can also send what is called fan mail. So if you're in the show notes, look at the very top and it says send fan mail, and it will send a text to me. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what part of the world you're listening to this in. I'd love to hear what the temperature's like with you. Is it cooler, hotter than here? I love connecting with people and I'm also always so grateful for you for listening. So just to leave you with one final thought, and I wrote this down because I wanted to end reminding you of this. The goal is never to collect enough evidence you finally feel certain. The goal is to help your nervous system feel safe enough to trust yourself again, which I think is really poignant. So have an amazing week, and I look forward to speaking to you all again very soon. Take care.